Talks. Good evening, good evening. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, I just have this disclaimer first before we start officially. Please note, everyone, that this session is being recorded, and by joining, you are giving consent for your image or voice to be recorded with the understanding that they may appear in UWI media or other media in the future. So once again, welcome. My name is Celia Davidson Francis, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations for the University of the West Indies, and I'm located at the regional headquarters in Kingston, Jamaica. I'm very glad to see that many have joined from Antigua and Barbuda, the Caribbean, and North America. So welcome again all. I'm excited to bring you this evening's top tier talk. Let me, not sure why. I think I need a little assistance. Shavar or Joshua, could you advance the slide to slide 3, please? Joshua?
We don't have any control over that. You're sharing your screen and you have the control of the PowerPoint.
Okay, for some reason it's not working. Apologies, everyone. We'll soon sort this out.
And Celia, just go over to the PowerPoint itself, right?
Okay, all right. I'm excited to bring you this evening's top tier talk, designed to allow our graduates to hear from top UWI management about a topic of their choice that they feel is important and that they wish to share. These sessions also give you, as graduates and UWI Pelicans, an opportunity to interact with UWI executives. They are a special part of our Soft and Life Skills series, which is a part of our Pelican Perks Advantage program. The topic this evening is leading in an academic enterprise in the 21st century, which promises to be very informative and interesting. Let me tell you a little bit about our distinguished guest, Professor Densil Williams, by way of introduction. A couple of interesting facts about him first. He was a Jamaica Government Exhibition Scholar, a Jamaica Flour Mill Scholar, a Lome 4 Scholar, and a Commonwealth Scholar. So he was often recognized as someone deserving of being invested in as a student. He has certainly proven that he delivers on the confidence placed in him. He is a professor of international business, principal of the UWI Five Islands campus, and also Pro-Vice Chancellor, Industry Academic Partnerships and Planning at the UWI. He is the former Executive Director of the Mona School of Business and Management at the UWI Mona campus, the largest business school in the Caribbean. He obtained a Bachelor of Science degree with first-class honors in Economics and Management Studies, a master's degree in International Business from the UWI, and he obtained a PhD in International Business and Strategy from Manchester Business School, University of Manchester in the UK. Interestingly, he is the youngest person to be promoted to the rank of professor in the history of the UWI Mona campus, and also the first person in the over 40-year history of business and management education at the UWI Mona campus to be promoted to the rank of professor. He has been busy since his first academic appointment, publishing over 60 referred works on economic development, small firm strategy, and economic competitiveness in academic journals, book chapters, and conference proceedings. He's the author of 5 books, 2 of which won outstanding research awards at the UWI. He was also awarded the prize for the most outstanding researcher in the Faculty of Social Sciences at the UWI Mona campus in 2013 and 2015. The Mona School of Business Management, there he led many transformational initiatives in administrative processes, research and innovation, and teaching and learning. He spearheaded the establishment of the first Bloomberg Finance Lab in a business school in the Caribbean. The lab went on to win the UK-based Association of MBAs Award for Innovation in 2018. Additionally, he led a comprehensive revision of the MBA and MSc curriculum to include a final field project in all programs, and also created new pathways for persons to access the programs based on substantial work experience as an alternative to the traditional matriculation requirements. Under his leadership, the school won a number of international and national awards. Chief among them is the Best of Chamber Jamaica Chamber of Commerce Small Business category in 2015. Densil serves on a number of boards as chairman, deputy chairman, and director in the public and private sectors in Jamaica and the wider Caribbean region. He has delivered keynote addresses at numerous conferences, both in the public and private sectors in the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Australia, Asia, and Africa. In summary, Professor Williams has contributed greatly to Antigua and Barbuda, the UWI, the Caribbean, and the world through his knowledge and expertise. So, fellow Pelicans and distinguished attendees, all, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Professor Densil A. Williams, who will now discuss leading in an academic enterprise in the 21st century. Over to you, Densil.
Okay, wonderful. I hope everybody's hearing me, yes? So thank you so much, Celia, for that very kind introduction. And thank you very much to all our fellow Pelicans for coming to hear this talk this evening. I'm very happy to share some thoughts with you this evening about leading the academic enterprise in the 21st century. But before I do that, I was reliably informed by our host that our very distinguished Chancellor Emeritus, Sir George Allen, has joined us, and I want to give a very special welcome to Sir George, a very distinguished Pelican as well, and a leader in our university system. So pardon me if I don't single out anyone else, but you would understand Sir George's leadership and mentorship to academics like us, and we have to give thanks for his leadership as Chancellor for 14 years of our distinguished university. Colleagues and friends, it's so good that we can have these discussions, and I want to thank Celia and her team as well. I think these are very important points of discussions that we can have within our university community about topics that are very interesting and novel, and that will excite our thinking, and also at some point can lead to some tangible outputs or outcomes in various facets of life. So I think this is a very good series, in essence, what I'm trying to say. And I want to thank Celia and her team for organizing these talks. And I want to encourage you to continue, and I want to encourage our Pelicans to continue to participate in our university. Normally, when people hear about the UWI and their alumni association, it's always thinking about giving. We're not just about giving, we're also about sharing. And so this is one of them, one of those activities that is geared towards sharing and engaging our alumni to work very closer with our university. So this evening, I chose the important topic of leading the academic enterprise in the 21st century. And just to give you some thoughts about really why I chose this topic. So those of you who have been following developments in higher ed, say maybe for the last decade or so, you would have recognized that higher ed is coming under some serious threat, especially from a particular groupthink about how the academia should be structured and what should be its role in society, and especially universities like ours in a developing country, which really have a mandate that is slightly different from a university in a more developed country context that doesn't really have to be focused so much on the economic development of their nation state, but they can focus on other areas. While we have to do those other things like about innovation, etc., our university, in the context of a developing society, also has to make a concerted effort to say, how do we position the academe as part of the discourse, as part of the solution towards our underdevelopment? And so it really triggered my mind that I should talk about how we should lead an academic enterprise in this kind of space where it is now becoming very difficult for academic leaders to actually traverse the various actors and sectors that are critical to shaping the future of global academia. And so that's really triggered some thoughts about how we really should be structuring our academic enterprise. And specifically, as I said, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the academic enterprise within the context of a developing state. So I took my original cue. Most of you may know Benjamin Disraeli. Interestingly, just a piece of fact. So Benjamin Disraeli, as you know, could easily be considered the first non-white a British prime minister. A lot of people say Rishi Sunak is, but if you go back to early, mid-late 19th century, about 1874, 75, thereabout, you had a man called Benjamin Disraeli, who's of Jewish descent, who was actually a conservative prime minister in Britain. But why I went there is to share a thought with you when he made an observation that a university supposed to be a place of light, liberty, and learning. That's an interesting observation. And this was a late 19th century prime minister talking about what's the role of a university ought to be. Fast forward to almost 200 years on. And what you're seeing now is really a difference in terms of what a university ought to be and ought to look like. And so the real tension becomes, how do you reconcile both positions? How do you reconcile both positions? Because both positions have their value. So the question is, how are you going to reconcile those in order to make sure that the university continues to thrive and survive and prosper in a new dispensation, in a new environment, while holding on to that great creed of light, liberty, and learning? So I have a few thoughts that I would like to share with you in terms of what the leadership of a university ought to be focused on. And I will just read a few notes here. Universities that were once seen as a place of light, liberty, and learning are now challenged to become a factory for producing workers with marketable skills, to churn out research that are able to solve problems for industry and measure its success about how well paid their graduates are. So there's a thinking now that issue of light, liberty, and learning, which is really just allowing the mind to explore and allowing the mind to philosophize and allowing the mind to think beyond what is now existing and think about a future that may not even be there, but can be shaped at some point. That's what the university was there about. But today, what we're seeing is that a new thinking is on the horizon, which says that really university is becoming like a factory. You're going to produce some workers that are going to work in industry, and you determine how well your university is doing based on how well paid your graduates are. So the idea of a university as an ecosystem that facilitate interdisciplinary teaching and learning, nurture humane values of freedom of thought and expression, and build a citizenry that is empowered to think critically and make their own decisions to advance their lives is fast evaporating. That view of the university is fast evaporating. With this change in perspective on what a university should and ought to be, major stakeholders who fund institutions, especially for publicly funded universities, are now diverting resources away from these institutions and asking that they become self-sufficient and generate their own resources to fund their operations. Colleagues, friends, in order for these universities to survive, they have to now make tough decisions about what to teach, what to research, who should be part of the community, and who should they let go in order to meet their bottom line as a university. So with these new types of decisions that universities have to make, in addition to that traditional role that we spoke about of light, liberty, and learning, the real question therefore becomes, what kind of leader will be necessary to balance the university ecosystem with its traditional mandate for light, liberty, and learning, and its new mandate as a sort of a production factory to meet the needs of today's industries. So I want to bring you back to some context within which these debates have emerged. For many centuries, the leaders of universities were mostly academics, where vice chancellors or presidents or whatever name that you want to call these leaders. They would spend just a few hours on the job. They would build collegial relationship with their constituents or with the members of their community. They would hand out degrees at functions and deliver speeches and arouse intellectual curiosity. Academic leaders were expected to be persons who would be the moral conscience of a society. They would stand above politics of the day, and they would be seen as the face of fairness, equity, balance, and that mediator to help society to deal with very complex problems from racism to climate change. That is how our academic leaders were viewed then. However, if you think about the University of Oxford as a case in point, and I would like to draw that reference as one of the oldest universities in the world. The University of Oxford, as the outgoing Vice Chancellor Louise Richardson pointed out, and I want to take a quote from her to show you the context within which this tension is now actually rising. Louise Richardson noted that for many centuries, university leaders at Oxford were primarily men of the church, humanists, lawyers, philosophers, historians, from John Owen, the 17th century theologian, to Henry Liddell, author of the monumental Greek-English lexicon, and Benjamin Jowett, the Victorian cleric and translator of Plato. These leaders, their authorities as academic leaders, stemmed largely from their long immersion in an academic tradition of letters and often of liturgy. It was only in the second half of the 20th century that scientists such as Rex Richards began to be represented in the role of Vice Chancellor at the University of Oxford. Today, however, given the new face of what a university ought to be, and the new funding challenges, especially for publicly funded universities, despite the need to hold on to the traditional and medieval roles of the university, the modern university leadership requires leaders not to only uphold the humane traditions of the scholarly environment, but to also operate as chief executive officers akin to those of major multinational corporations. The new university leader has to be conversant with corporate lingo, such as revenue, cash flows, profits, investment portfolios in stocks and bonds and derivatives, supply chain and logistics, among all of the various new dimensions that a corporate CEO have to now be concerted with. So, the modern university leader, I am submitting, has to be able to build commercial partnerships, negotiate public-private contracts that can generate returns on investment for both sets of actors, both those persons of the traditional view and those persons of the modern view of the university. They have to also be conversant with things like IFRS standards to ensure effective corporate governance while undertaking complex financial deals, and at the same time ensuring environmental, social, and governance parameters are all in place to effectively meet the demands of the new ESG framework for effective and inclusive management of their institution. This kind of demand on the leadership of a modern university will require a new skill set, which is going to be or has been foreign to a lot of our predecessors who have built our universities to this point in their history. And again, if you go back to Louise Richardson's observation about Oxford, you will recognize that the skill set then of the leaders of the university of that era is going to be far more different from the skill set of the university leaders of this era, but there has to be some reconciliation of both positions. So I want to make a few points about how we can build that leadership cadre for the new university, or the new way of thinking about the university, which has to now coexist with the traditional way as well. The new university leader, I will submit, has to be John's face. This new university leader has to have the academic gravitas to implement humane policies to protect the core mission of the university as an ecosystem for light, liberty, and learning, where scholarship can thrive, where interdisciplinary teaching and learning can take place, where the spirit of community and rigorous debate among its constituents can set a moral tone for society. But on the other hand, the leader must also have the skill set to oversee the commercialization of universities' research output, build partnerships with industry to raise funds for research and development, oversee the raising of capital through the issuing of bonds on the equity market, through the issuing of equity positions in university spin-offs, and the development of special purpose vehicles to manage off-balance sheet items for university operations, but do it in an ethical way. The leader must be able to manage a healthy balance sheet that can withstand the test of credit rating agencies to allow the university to raise capital to fund transformational projects in the foreseeable future, and projects that will be long gone beyond the tenure of any individual leader at any point in time. So as a university, we can't just say we're going to make an investment in a particular project that is going to only last the time of the vice chancellor or the president, but we have to look about the next 50, the next 80, the next 100 years, and what kind of investments we're making today that we can actually secure our future for the next 100 years. And so it is important that the new university leader have to have that kind of forward-thinking vision as well, in terms of how they're making plans for the university and not just a short cycle plan. So while this Jonas face leader might be rare among members of the university community, I am of the view that they can be developed and trained for the new model or the new direction that universities are now heading. Modern day universities now have schools of business of high repute, of offering business and management training, which once was absent from many of our universities at the time of many of our predecessors. So they didn't have business schools. They didn't have management schools. So take, for example, our own University of the West Indies here at Mona campus. Take the campus, the Mona campus as a case in point. Before, we started in 1948, and we only had a Department of Management Studies in 1972, when the late Professor Marshall Hall came back from his studies and his professional career in the United States, and came back to the Faculty of Social Sciences and decided that we need to improve the management training of our population. And so he started off dealing with started off by putting together the Department of Management Studies as we now know it at the Mona campus. Before Professor Hall came in 1972, the campus social sciences was mostly focused on the traditional social sciences discipline of economics, sociology, etc. But these disciplines, while they are very important, they did not prepare leaders for the current modalities of the corporatization of the operations of universities. 50 years on, we now have established business schools right across the entire ecosystem of our university. We have business school in Trinidad, we have business school in Barbados, we have business school in Jamaica, we now have a school of business and management at our landed campus in Antigua as well, Antigua and Barbuda as well. So today, our university now have taken on this mantra of training leaders to handle the complexities of corporate life, as well as handling the very rigorous academic rigors that need to be carried out as leaders of a university. 50 years on, we have established business schools in our university, which have trained some of the best corporate minds right across the region, including people like Don Webby, the CEO of Grace Kennedy. He is a two-time graduate of our Mona School of Business and Management right here at our Mona campus. So I am arguing that if we're going to create that Jonas face leader, what we need to have is these leaders that are aspiring to university leadership. They need to be immersed in the training that business schools provide as they prepare to take on executive leadership in a modern context in a modern university. They should be engaged in courses on corporate finance, leadership, governance, strategic planning, decision science, ethics, and social responsibility, among others. But our business schools are well equipped to provide that training for our leaders who are now taking on leadership in a modern university. These will help our academic leaders who are aspiring to leadership in a new dispensation of leading a university to complement their strong academic training in the traditional disciplines and also complement their traditional role of academics within the university setting. This corporatized mode of training leaders will be significant for the future of the university because, as I indicated before, the university now has to both ride, whistle, and chew gum, as we say, at the same time, where they have to engage in the traditional role of a university, the teaching, the learning, the research, and the high quality accreditation standards, etc. But they still have to maintain their plant, they still have to maintain their prestige, they still have to make sure that their professors are paid, they still have to make sure that their faculty and stuff get their necessary benefits that are negotiated, and therefore they have to generate the necessary revenues to do that. And so they have to be conversant with issues to do with how you interact with the capital market in order to gain those revenues that you now not getting from your traditional source of governments and all those things that you used to get, an alumni contribution and donor contribution. In essence, you have to now go out there and you have to earn your keep. So you have to do both. You have to do the traditional role, but you have to try and earn your keep as well. And therefore, the leader of a university now has to take on that face of a corporate type CEO. So, colleagues, as I try to wind down, because I really want to hear more from you in terms of how you see the leadership of universities going forward as well, having heard my own background and as to what exactly how we reconcile those tensions between the traditionalist view and the neoclassical view. So most universities have what we call dons. And a lot of you here who are in the academic community, you know what I'm talking about. In university settings, we normally call the professors the dons. Because indeed, the professorate is really the fulcrum of what makes a university. The professorate is so important to a university. I've always remarked to my colleagues, and it just in light banter, that students come to university because of the quality of the professors that are there. And therefore, your professorate is so critical to the survival of your universities. But while these professors and the dons, as we call them, would have liked to have, very little to do with the management of people, reading of balance sheet and profit and loss statement, and they wish to go back to those very wonderful days when we could just philosophize and we spend a few hours on the job as university leaders and we rotate university leadership without having any great, understanding of what it is to make decisions at a corporate level. And leadership is also based on seniority within the system and not so much based on who has the right skill set at this point in time. And the senior academics could just go and they carry on the academic role of leadership and they delegate the administrative role to people like the non-academics who sometimes don't have an appreciation for what we do as part of the academic enterprise. And therefore we delegate and say, leave the academics to do academic. things, and we delegate administration to non-academics who really don't have all the time to an appreciation of the nuances and the complexities of an academic environment. So while the Dons would like to see those days, and a lot of our own colleagues would like to see those days, where the vice chancellor is focusing on their ceremonial role, and they become just the moral face of society, and they do the necessary conversation to build the university image, etc. Regrettably, friends, I think those days are now coming to an end. What we have to embrace is the modern leadership of the university, where the leader has to be able to have what I call a Janus face, where they have to be able to put on the hat as an academic and still strive to ensure that their university, their institution can continue with the rigors of scholarship. They can continue with the rigors of quality assurance to maintain our quality standards, and also pass their necessary accreditation tests and accreditation agencies, etc. But while they're doing that, they have to also pay attention to a healthy balance sheet, so that that healthy balance sheet can allow them to raise capital on the capital market that can now be used to invest in bankable projects that are now going to generate that kind of income that you now need in order to carry on the business, the core business of the university. And so that leader that we're now looking for in the new university has to display that sense and that gravitas of academic sophistication, while at the same time being managerially astute, so that you can reconcile and bring both roles together, and you don't have to have a tension between being an academically sophisticated intellectual and at the same time you have a managerial astuteness about understanding the corporate role of the university. How do you go out in the corporate sector and you can raise funding from the corporate sector, whether through debt or through equity, and you can raise that funding now in order to fund operations in the university that is now going to generate the kind of income that you need to maintain the ecosystem within a university. So in essence, colleagues, as I close off, what I am trying to say here is that the new leadership of a university is not an effortless task. It is not an easy one. It is going to require certain understanding of the complexities of leadership at various levels. Jim Collins calls it the level 5 leadership. I'm not imposing level 5 leadership on you now. But what I'm saying is that if you're going to bring your university to the next level of academic vibrancy, the next level of getting your university to participate significantly in the developmental discourse and building the human capital of your country, of your region, the truth is that you have to embrace a leadership that knows how to take what it is that the university produces, and you're now going to combine that with our what we call in our strategic plan at the UWI, aligning that with the needs of the society that you're serving, so that we can have a harmonious relationship between our university and the various actors, the governmental actors, the non-governmental actors, your plurilateral organizations, your private sector. All of those actors now come to bear on the running of a university. And as a university leader, you have to be sophisticated enough to pull all those sectors together in harmony so that you can have a thriving and a vibrant university environment. So leadership will have to embrace a kind of Janus face approach towards leading a university in the 21st century. So I'm going to stop there, Celia and colleagues, and I'm going to allow you to shoot some questions and let us now have a dialogue on how we see the university going forward. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Densil. That was truly fascinating. You've given an overview that I'm sure is going to elicit a lot of questions and comments. And we, in the Caribbean especially, certainly do have a difficult challenge ahead of us, given that we're coming out of the COVID era, and that we have to, as you say, balance not only our academics, which we are known for, because we have a responsibility for improving the human capital of the region, but also our leaders have to be very savvy in terms of bringing the resources needed nowadays to get the job done. So thank you very much. I have already gotten several comments. The first actually is interesting because they would like to know the age that you were made professor.
Maybe I'm going to give away my age, but I was made a
You're
professor.
still young. You're still young.
I was made a professor at 36. Yes.
Can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen? Wow, that's amazing. Okay. The
But
first
let me
one,
just hasten to say though, Celia, I'm not the only one now. The university has been so prolific that after me, and there is another professor who made age 36 as well, Professor Eddie Ventos in Barbados. I
really?
think, yes.
Yes,
And
okay.
and
That's
there are a
right.
number of others who have come after us as well. But no one has gone below 36 as yet.
Well, you were the first people to break that barrier, so congrats on behalf of all of us listening.
Good.
I'd just also like to add, while I have the opportunity, my special greetings to Sir Georgia Lane, our Chancellor Emeritus, who is online, and a couple of other persons that I just like to mention that have the names have stuck out to me. Marcia Gilbert Roberts, who is Jamaica's ambassador. She's in the diplomatic corps and a UWI graduate. Tamara Scott Williams, Mr. Moulton Keane, who is a very enthusiastic graduate and who has been in touch with me already about the 75th anniversary and other things. Professor Tomlin Paul, Carl Pilgrim, Kathy Lynn, Dr. Arna Brown Morgan, Solomon Hunt, Paris Liuai, and Sandra Griffith Carrington, who is my campus alumni officer for the Open Campus and helps me with sessions such as these. So welcome to everyone online, but those names jumped out. I'm sure there'll be others that I'll mention along the way. So the next question is, why is it that pay scales for new graduates remain low decade after decade, which results in a kind of persistent brain drain?
Yes. If I may share some thoughts on that, that's an interesting observation, Celia, because one of the things that we ought to recognize, we as the university, you know, I keep telling people while we're trying to do so many things and trying to do spin-off companies and, you know, getting into the business of commercialization and stuff, really our core mandate is to prepare the human capital resource of the country, of the region, of the nation, and make sure that that human capital is at a very sophisticated level, or, you know, put another way, a globally competitive level, that it can go anywhere and compete and win. Now, why do I say that? I say that to say that in the issues of pay and those kinds of issues, they are more external to the university. They are now more looking at how your society is absorbing the human capital that you have prepared. And so while the university can prepare the human capital, etc., we now have to have a closer connection with industry so that industry can now actually absorb this human capital, value this human capital properly, and pay for it. So it really requires, Celia, the colleague who asked the question, a closer collaboration, in my view, between the university and industry so that industry can better understand the value of the human capital they're getting and properly price the human capital so that you can properly reward them for the work they have done. And within our stage of development as a country, these are some things that you're seeing happening as we move closer and closer to our modern economic, what I would call economic management and stability within the economy. And I'll just give you a quick example. Take, for example, the Jamaican financial sector. Maybe 2-3 decades ago, the pay scale in that sector was just so bad, yeah, that a lot of the people who are high flyers and stuff couldn't survive. They have to migrate. If you take today, fast forward 20-30 years on, we have built a modern financial sector now in Jamaica, thanks to policies and all these things that have taken place. We have built a modern, very innovative financial sector in Jamaica. So when you compare the pay scale in the financial sector in Jamaica, it's way above, much more superior than a lot of other sectors. And so what you will see as the sector starting to emerge and starting to become innovative and starting to grow and embrace international standards and embrace the best in terms of competitiveness, you will also see the pay following there as well. So in essence, it's a two-pronged approach. We, the university, have to provide the human capital. The policymakers and industry players, they will have to also help now to take that human capital to improve the competitiveness competitiveness of the industry. And when the competitiveness of the industry is improved, then the pay scale and those things will also improve. So that's the view that I would have, Celia, for that one.
Okay, supported. The next question is, are all UE business management schools accredited by international bodies?
Well, when Vice Chancellor Emeritus Sir Nigel Harris was here, he gave a charge to the university that we should get all our campuses accredited at the first stage by our national accreditation councils. So with all campuses now, I would, well, not assume, I know, all campuses are now accredited by their national accreditation councils. We know that. So all the business schools and everybody fall under that, under those accreditation council. But rest assured, though, that those national accreditation councils, the standards at those councils are still second to none. And I will give you just a small piece of anecdote. I recall when the Mona campus was being accredited for the first time, I think in 2008-9 thereabout. I don't remember the exact date, period. But when it was being accredited for the first time as an institution, I recall we had one of the most, respected accreditors. I think his name was John Rundle. Sir George may recall his name, but he's a serial accreditor, as they would call it. He goes around the entire world and he accredits universities. And he said that he has been doing that for almost 25, 30 years. But why do I mention that? I recall the day when we were having the closing out ceremony for the accreditation, for the accreditors. He made a comment, and that comment has stuck with me ever since, maybe 13, 14 years now. He said, listen, I have gone to many universities across the world over the last 2 decades, accrediting institutions. And I must say that the quality assurance system of the University of the West Indies is one of the finest I've ever seen anywhere in the world. So what I say this to say, that the quality of what we have is something to be proud of as a university. And it is not only validated by our local accreditors, it is validated by international accreditors as well, global standards. And I will go on now to say about our business schools specifically. While none of our business schools have the AACSB accreditation, which is an institutional accreditation. And by the way, AACSB is now moving to program accreditation as well. And we have some issues to sort out internally because of the structure of our university before we can get institutional accreditation from AACSB. Most of the business schools on the different campuses have the accreditation for their flagship program, which is their MBA. So I know, for example, Mona has their MBA accreditation from AMBA. And as you know, the Association of MBA AMBA accredits only about 2% of global MBAs worldwide. So I know Mona has it. I know St. Augustine Lockjack has it. And I think Kville was in the process of getting that as well. But that is a very important mark of quality as well, of quality assurance for our business schools. So while we don't have institutional accreditation, and I may just divulge a little bit of information here, but one of the reasons for the lack of institutional accreditation at the AACSB level right now is that the structure of the university, how it operates is that if you were to accredit one of the business schools as an institution, because our university, when our students graduate, their certificate does not say you're a graduate in your MBA from Mona or you're a graduate in your MBA from St. Augustine. It just says an MBA from the UWI. And what AACSB is saying, if we were to accredit one of the business schools and not the others, then it would actually take away from the recognition of the AACSB accreditation for that single entity. So we are now in the process of looking at how we can harmonize that under one umbrella so we can go after AACSB accreditation as an institutional accreditation. But I know business schools are now thinking through programmatic accreditation. And as some of you may know, some of you who are in the academe, you may know that AACSB has moved to accreditation for programs. And I know one of the programs that they have started with was the accounting program. And I know, for example, at the Mona campus, our MSc in accounting is a very, very highly sorted after program in terms of accounting in the Caribbean region. And we know that program has the kind of gravitas that it can go towards AACSB accreditation. So our leaders have to now look at those, and we take our time and we move towards getting those accreditation.
Okay, excellent. A very in-depth explanation. Thank you. And also, I just wanted to point out that Clive Devers is in agreement. He says that you're on target with your focus on leadership and stresses that strategic leadership, but also responding to change is very important. I'd also like to welcome Professor PVC and Professor Dale Weber, who's the principal of the Mona campus. He's joined us.
Hi, welcome, colleague, Principal Weber.
Kathy Lynn had asked actually the first question that I posed, but she's also says that the ceremonial role is important too, and equity and yes, equity and the problem of debt is something that's not really new, but it has kind of come into more of a focus.
Yes.
So I think you've already expounded on that. Eileen Garcia asked, how can you gain finances by getting full paying students from countries outside the Caribbean, China or North America, for example?
Okay, so I didn't get the name of the person who asked the question, but
what Eileen Garcia.
Okay, Eileen, so very important question, because as we think through how we are going to find new streams of revenue for our enterprise, you're spot on. We have to look at our core business. And what is our core business? At the end of the day, our core business is still teaching and learning, yeah, and research and advocacy. So how do we use that now to generate new revenue streams? Yeah, I am not against university building houses and dormitories. I'm not against that, but I'm saying we still have to have a focus on our core, and we make our bread and butter come from our core. So I say this to say, Arlene, that what we could do is to make sure that, one, the quality standards of our program is second to none. That attracts students. Students want to see high quality programs. And when they get high quality programs, they will go after those. Similarly, our professorate, as I mentioned somewhere earlier in the conversation as well, that the quality of your professors is going to make a big difference in terms of how students see you and how students are attracted to you. Yeah, it is very important to have professors that are of international repute, that students are going to want to come to your university because they hear that this professor is actually at the UWI. They want to come because they want to be a part of reparatory justice. They want to come because they want to be a part of climate justice. They want to come because they want to be a part of modern management thinking. They want to come because they hear that these professors are there. So the quality of your professor is important. The quality of your program is important. But make no mistakes about it. You see, this idea that we normally talk about our ranking, more and more, we are now recognizing how critical that is for students. When we talk to students, the first thing that they say is, your university ranked? And they go into Times Higher Ed, they either go into the Times ranking, they go to the Shanghai ranking there, and they go to the various ranking agencies. And they look and they say, where is your university ranked? And if your university is not on that league table, believe me, they are not going to give you the first attention. But the fact that you're on that league table, you start getting attention. So we are very proud that our university is now in the top 1.5% of the global best when we are ranked with THE. And some people question, what do you mean by 1.5% and stuff? But if you think about it, THE ranks roughly about 1,800 universities annually. Out of that, out of the total number of universities that are there, of the total number of universities based on UNESCO's estimate and Weber metrics and those, it's about 30,000 institutions globally that are offering degrees and certificates and diplomas. So if you take where we are in the league table now at about, I think our latest rank is about 400 or 500. If you take that and you put that over the 30,000, you easily see where we are in terms of the 1.5%. And that makes people now saying, wow, this is a university I want to start looking at. And then the conversation begins. So I would say, Eileen, what you need to do is to firstly get into the conversation. And these are some important variables that are going to help you to get into the conversation. If you're not in the conversation, the student's not looking at you. So get into the conversation and then you build it from there.
Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna now move on to Solomon. Solomon raised his hand. I'm gonna ask Joshua to unmute Solomon so he can ask his question.
Yes. Good evening, Professor.
Hi, good evening, Solomon.
Yes. First, let me thank you for your informative presentation. It was a great one. Also, I want to support your idea of the new mandate all leaders of universities should have going forward. I just have one concern, and that is in respect of your statement as to what how you came by the idea that the universities are operating like production factories. I just need some clarity in that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Solomon. Yeah. I mean, that was just my description in terms of where I when you listen to the discourse, you know, and you're starting to wonder, hold on. Sometimes you even talk to policymakers and they're saying, listen, we just want graduates. Yeah, they don't tell you about the quality of graduates. Yes, they don't tell you about the critical thinking skills of graduates. They just want somebody with a certificate. Yeah, and so my parallel was like commodification of knowledge, basically. Yeah, and so I made that akin to a production factory where you're just churning out stuff. You put them on a conveyor belt and you're churning them out. But we know that that's not the role of a university at all. You need time for reflection. You need time for thinking. You need a space where you can just go and you can philosophize and you can discuss. You can enter into a debate that is esoteric. But out of that esoteric debate, you may end up finding something that now can be used to solve a particular problem that you are struggling with, or even a problem that we haven't thought about as yet. So the point I'm making, Solomon, is that there is a need for that space. But when you listen especially to some of the kind of unbridled neoliberal approach to management, they say, no, just get an instrumentalist approach. Get somebody who can come into the factory tomorrow morning and they can start working. So they're saying universities must prepare somebody to build the next BMW, to build the next Rolls Royce, to build, to derive the next derivative for, HSBC. But that's not what university learning is about. We give you the tools. And when you get the tools, you can now go and you can now adapt those tools to the particular context that you're in. But that's really what I'm talking about, the conveyor belt kind of approach, rather than the approach where we're building the human capital and allow the human capital now to go out and explore. I just draw a quick one on you, Solomon, for this. Yeah, I recall when I don't know if you know Charles Handy, yeah, who was at BP Shell, yeah, but you know that Charles Handy went to Oxford and he did the classics. And people were wondering how the hell a man like this who doing the classic can be talking about trying to manage a global corporation like BP. But what that did was to give Charles Handy a foundation. And having given him a foundation, he was now able to step into BP and transform from the arts and the classics and stuff into a world-renowned businessman. So that's the point I'm making about university. We have to be very careful of this kind of selecting winner kind of approach in a university and let all views contend within a university. But we have to balance that with the need for immediate solution in industry as well.
Okay, that was very interesting, very informative. Okay, Tamara Scott Williams is asking, considering the current rampant issues of fraud and corruption in the financial sector, and that is definitely pertaining more to Jamaica than other places. Wait, I've just lost her coming. Sorry. Okay, considering the fraud and corruption, where university degrees are a requirement, do you think that universities should or can play a stronger role in refining the moral and ethical character of its students?
Yes. Well, thanks, Tamara. I assume this is Tamara who used to write for our Daily Observer. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. Hey, Tamara. Welcome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the issue of ethics, morality, and those things are Celia, as I mentioned earlier in the early part of the discourse, that these are issues that we have to contend with as a university. But make no mistakes that these are not issues that a university alone can resolve. Yeah, it is going to take a all of country, all of society approach to deal with these things. But what we can do in university, again, is to lay the foundation for that conscience, for that thinking, yes, to start taking place and germinate within the minds of our people. So ethics courses, for example, need to be compulsory for university graduates. We have to make sure that we teach them about ethics, we teach them about social responsibility, we teach them about the environment, because as you would all appreciate, those of you who are in the private sector, you can't get funding generally now on any major stock exchange without talking about the ESG framework. That has to become a part of what you do. I was in a presentation this morning and they started to show us one of the Caribbean's leading conglomerates, how they are now engaging with NASDAQ in order to implement the ESG framework so that they can prepare to now go on list on cross listing on global stock exchanges and stuff. So the truth is that universities now have to also ensure that their courses and their programs are geared towards those kinds of issues as well, to help our students to better appreciate this. But it cannot be only at the university level, Celia. This thing has to now start from our primary, secondary, and right throughout the education system. Our churches have to be a part of this discourse as well. And all our NGOs have to be a part of this discourse as well. So I would say a whole of country approach is really what we need to have a revolution in terms of ethical standards and ethical values of what we do in terms of our workforce and our peoples.
Yes, thank you. And I wholeheartedly agree. I'll be first in line to help teach the ethics course. I just as well like to welcome Dr. Gerald White Davis, who is our UWI Alumni Association president in New York, and everyone else on the call. There are lots of people here whose names I'm not familiar with, but I know that they are here because they have heard about you and wanted to hear what you had to say. So
thank you.
As we come to a close, I really would like to thank you most sincerely for sharing.
Sorry, Celia, I'm seeing my screen. I'm seeing Sir George's hand is up though. I don't know if you're recognizing it, yes?
No, I didn't see that. Sir George, please go right ahead. Can Joshua please unmute Sir George?
Thanks very much. First of all, let me congratulate you, Densil. That was absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Sir George. Thank you.
I admire not only the content, but the passion with which you spoke. That was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, sir.
I want to make just a couple of comments, if you'll allow me, Celia. One
Certainly.
is, I agree with you that Disraeli's time, light, liberty, and learning. But what I like that you pointed out during the course of this course is not that they have changed, but they have expanded. What constituted light in Disraeli's time is not light now. What constituted learning in Disraeli's time is not light now. The other point I hope you would have made is that while management has become crucial to everything we do, scientific management is really only 100 years old. I mean, it's relatively, Taylor is what? The turn of the last century.
Yes.
And the guru's guru, Peter Drucker, is the last half of the last century. So management as a discipline is another expression of the expansion of learning, which this really spoke. So your penultimate comment, I don't see any intrinsic conflict between what is as you pointed, the original pristine role of persons, leaders in university, and what is their current role. And I say this for this reason. If you look at all the CEOs of the top 500 companies, you mentioned Handy, more than 70% of them have a humanities degree.
Yes.
They didn't start off as business people. Correct. So I like very much your idea of this composite approach to learning. The penultimate point I would make is this. I like very much your idea of the private sector, what you're calling out the private sector. We always contend that universities produce graduates that are job ready, job prepared, not job ready, because what they're going to do in 20 years' time is completely different from what they do when they leave school. And we should insist that the private sector have a role in the continuing education of our graduates. But the last point I'd make is this, and this is my experience. Jack Welch didn't know all about making cars. What Jack Welch do, he was smart enough to hire people around him. And I would I'd suggest that one of the qualities of the good leader in academia, anywhere else, is the nous, the skill to get good people around her so that the team can function effectively as a team. Jack Welch in his book point out that he didn't know everything. He got good people around him and that was part of his skill. I mean, he hired and fired them at will, but that's another issue. But he got good people around him. So I admire, congratulations, your presentation, absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Sir George. I really appreciate it and really appreciate you taking the time, and good to see you actually. Yes. But let me, Celia, if you may just make a quick point on Sir George's observation. Yeah. But I think especially the last point about identifying talent. In essence, Sir George, that is really what a good CEO does. You are absolutely correct. Good CEO is not going to go down on the floor and do grunt work. Their role is at the strategic level to say, who is it that I need for finance? Who is it that I need for decision sciences? Who is it that I need for marketing? Who is it? And you put the talent pool together. But then where the CEO comes in is to hold that pool together so that they can work in harmony. So you're spot on. You're absolutely correct. And that is why, notice I did not say that to become the next leader of a university, you must go to a business school. I said that, no, you must embrace that training, but you can come from anywhere, but embrace that training so you build it together. So you're absolutely correct. And the final thing I will say, I actually like your observation about the parallel between Disraeli's time and now, because that is exactly the issue. It is not that light, liberty, and learning is not relevant today. It is relevant, but it is a transformation. What was light then is not light now. And as a result of that, what we have to do is embrace the transition in terms of the development of knowledge as we move forward. So thank you very much for those points.
Yes, very interesting indeed. I'm going to just take two more questions because they're very interesting. I think you'd like to answer them. I just also wish to acknowledge Isilma from Anguilla, who wanted to say good evening. So good evening to you, Isilma. Shirley would like to know, what are the implications of ChatGPT or AI, artificial intelligence, for the new kind of leadership that will be required for going forward?
Thank you, Shirley. Very, very interesting question. So there's this tension that we have with chatbot and ChatGPT and those things, and think that it is going to replace us. Now, if you think about it for a minute or so, while those technologies and these kinds of innovation that is taking place in the technological world are helpful, what I see them as are complements. I don't see them as substitutes. And you know why? If you take ChatGPT, for example, Celia, while it can recall a lot of things, it doesn't have the same analytical power as the human being. And so what the human being will now do is to continue to have that superior analytical power that is going to even advance ChatGPT more so that it can do things. So if you give ChatGPT, for example, a scenario that is not programmed within their normal structure, it's not going to respond to it. But the human being now, having recognized that, can now give that scenario through an algorithm, and then it will respond. So the truth is that I see what it does. It complements what we do. It is not a substitute for us. And therefore, we should actually embrace it, and we continue to use our higher order skills. So for example, in the classroom, people are now saying ChatGPT is used to write essays for students and stuff. It means that we as professors have to change our teaching style. So we're not going to class anymore and give people rote learning. We're going to give them scenario analysis and say, look at this scenario. Give us exactly how this is going to play out. Yeah, ChatGPT is not going to know this new scenario. So that is really the kind of complement that I'm talking about, really. Yes?
Excellent. Yes. Sonia now wishes to know, do you envisage tertiary institutions adopting structural changes by adopting a program of offerings of lifelong learning, for example, continuous micro-credentiality versus traditional bachelor to master's to doctoral titling?
Yes. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't
Sonia.
get the name. I didn't get the
Sonia.
name. Sonia, thank you very much. So yeah, Sonia, the truth is that that is happening already. And that's exactly, lifelong learning has now become a big part of the discourse within academia. There is a study that was recently published by the World Bank. I don't know if you can lay your hand on it. It talks about short cycle courses. Yeah. And that's really where it is going now. A lot of persons are not opting for traditional degrees and going to school for 3, 4, 5 years, but they're going on to short cycle courses, maybe a 13 weeks, a 6 weeks, a 10 weeks and stuff. And it is upskilling them. And those people who have their degrees are still going back to these places to upskill themselves as they go into the labor market and stuff. I will just make a plug here for our Five Islands campus. For example, we have started a unit down there called the Lifelong Learning Unit. And one of the courses that we offer is what is called Credential of Readiness from Harvard Business School. So we had a partnership with Harvard Business School, and they gave us 3 major courses: finance, decision sciences, and economics. And so a lot of persons are taking those courses because they say, we just want a refresher as we go into the labor market and stuff like that, and they're upgrading themselves. So lifelong learning is going to be a big part of how we're actually going to credential ourselves going forward. And interestingly, it can be a very big source of revenue earning for us as well. And that is why our university strategic plan, if you look at what we have now as a new strategic plan, we have called for a very targeted sum to be earned from lifelong learning courses as well. And so each campus is now developing their CPE programs, and we're going to be launching those in a big way going forward. So thank you.
Thank you too. Well, we're over time, which means that people really had a lot to say and gleaned a lot from your presentation. I've had comments like solid dynamic thinking, practical, informative, refreshing, great presentation overall. So thank you very much, PVC Densil A. Williams, for being our guest this evening on Top Tier Talks. A lot of persons have been asking about whether the presentation has been recorded. It has, and it will be shared in our upcoming UWI Nexus, which is our monthly e-newsletter. The link will be shared in another week or so. And we'll definitely, for those who wish to have it, you can email me at the IAD at alumni.ue.edu, and we will certainly send it out. But it is coming out in the next week or so in the UE Nexus. So thank you all for attending. It has been wonderful to see you on screen. Please, as you depart, please turn on your videos so we can say hi and bye. It's really nice to see all the faces from all over the Caribbean and the world, North America too. I know Sir George is in Washington, Gerald is in New York, Sonia, Noel, hi, how are you? Jacqueline from London, Joy Mighty. Who else am I seeing? Hi, Gerald, how are you? Paul Steinbach. Who else am I seeing? Kathy Lynn. Hi, Kathy, Dawn White, Dr. Brown Morgan. It's been a pleasure to have you all. And I know that you found Professor PVC Densil Williams's presentation as fascinating and informative as I did. And I'm sure many of you will be talking about it. And as soon as I send out the link, we'll be sharing it as well. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. And we'll see you soon at the next Top Tier Talk. I see Evadne. Hi, Evadne. I think you were waving a while ago. Marcia Gilbert Roberts. Nice to see you online. Please give my best to Terry Ann. I miss her. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Before I go, however, I need to thank the persons who helped me this evening. And that is Sherwin Reed, Joshua Bishop, Shavar Maloney, and Sandra Griffith Carrington. Thank you so much for all of the help that you gave this evening. This program would not have been possible without you. You are my very, very much needed support. And I truly appreciate the time you took to be with us this evening. Rosemary, nice to see you online too. Okay, take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you too. Bye, Densil. See you soon.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pelicans. Bye-bye. All the very
Take
best.
care.
Bye-bye. Good.
Have a good evening, everyone. Hi, Marcia.